In the world of equestrian sport, Michael Barisone has been called a legend. At the pinnacle of his career, his training guided multiple horses and dressage riders to Olympic medals, competing himself at the 2008 Games in Beijing. What could take a man from such success and stature in only a few short years to the role of defendant in a New Jersey courtroom, standing trial for 2 counts of attempted murder? Hi everyone, I'm Kevin, and this is Just Thought Lounge. JTL is the true crime channel that delivers serious, well-balanced coverage of the cases that really make you think. In the summer of 2019, Michael Barisone carried a loaded handgun with him to confront 2 of his farm tenants with whom he was having a dispute, Lauren Kanarek and Robert Goodwin. After he arrived at their residence, no one knows exactly what happened next. There have been a few versions of the story, and Michael himself remembers absolutely nothing. Let's take a look. Michael Barisone was larger than life. He was one of the best dressage riders in America. The execution of expert dressage involves the perfect coordination between horse and rider. From the French for training, it requires a dedication to constant improvement and practice. There were few trainers in the United States more respected in the equestrian community than Michael Barisone. Michael represented Team USA at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, one of his many accomplishments in a long career as an athlete, coach, horse trainer, and mentor. He was passionate about his horses and his work. Those who worked with Michael knew him to be flamboyant, positive, determined, and competitive. A supportive but direct coach, driven by a love of his sport.
You can't take a horse out in a dressage sport. You can't show up and in 5 rides be the world champion.
Yeah.
It takes 2 years of rides to be the world champion.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit what we have to work.
Michael had turned his personal success into a business one. By the age of 54, he owned 2 large equestrian facilities. One in Florida, where he could train with the horses in the winter months, and another larger property in New Jersey, Hawthorne Hill Farm. Hawthorne Hill was home to over 40 horses, a handful of working dressage students, as well as himself, his girlfriend Mary, and an assistant trainer, Justin. In the summer of 2018, and then again in 2019, Michael took on an aspiring amateur dressage rider, Lauren Kanarek. Michael and Lauren had met at a rider's clinic in Florida and made an arrangement. She would come to live on the New Jersey farm as a student of his. This was a common arrangement. She paid for training and to stable her horses on the farm. He would provide living accommodations and help her to progress as a rider. Lauren moved into the upper floor apartment of the farmhouse with her boyfriend, Robert Goodwin. On the main level of the house was Michael's home with his girlfriend. Occasionally, Mary's children would also stay with them. The arrangement on the farm worked for a time, albeit briefly. A rift formed when Lauren began to perceive Michael as failing on his end of the arrangement. Lauren had agreed to the arrangement based on the premise that the world-class, prestigious dressage trainer Michael Barisone would be her teacher and mentor. What she found, however, was that Michael did not exclusively train any of his students. She held sessions with Mary, a rider more experienced than she was, as well as many with the assistant trainer Justin Hardin, a qualified coach in his own right. Lauren grew rapidly resentful. Her trainers were not of the caliber that she desired. She butted heads with Mary Haskins in particular. The 2 women had very different ideas of how to approach their sport, and, apparently, everything else. Lauren, already an award-winning rider, had Olympic ambitions, and it appeared, with the financial backing of her father Jonathan, a wealthy New Jersey attorney, she was well-positioned to pursue her dreams. But it was Justin Hardin, a long-term employee of Michael's, that had emerged as her regular trainer, not Michael himself. Lauren complained of being nothing more than Michael's source of cash. She reportedly paid $5,000 a month to train, board her horse, and live on the property. But Lauren was not developing into a world-class dressage rider. She and her boyfriend Robert felt like outcasts at Hawthorne Hill. They felt bullied and minimized by the others on the farm. Exchanges between Michael and Mary with both Lauren and Robert had grown heated. Lauren had taken to social media to air her grievances. Her posts painted Michael Barisone as a bully, a racist, and an anti-Semite, amongst other despicable things. By the beginning of August 2019, after months of these posts and exchanges, the situation had become untenable. Around 2 p.m. on the 7th, Michael removed a handgun from the safe in his office. He got into his pickup truck and drove from the stable building, across the property, and to the farmhouse, where Lauren and Robert were at home. Responding officers, after fending off Lauren and Robert's dog, found Robert on top of Michael, in front of the porch to the house, and separated the two men. Both were placed in handcuffs. Lauren Kanarek had been hit by 2 bullets in the upper chest. She was immediately rushed to hospital. Michael Barisone had sustained multiple head injuries, as well as puncture wounds inflicted by Rosie, Lauren and Robert's dog. After sorting through the initial chaos, officers set out to piece together exactly what had gone down. Robert immediately told responders that Michael had been the shooter. He was on top of Michael in order to restrain him and to prevent him from doing further harm. Michael had tried to kill him as well, Robert stated, but that shot had missed. Lauren was not in a position to explain what had occurred. She underwent life-saving surgery and spent about 3 weeks in intensive care and 4 days in a coma. Michael Barisone, propped up against a nearby truck in the immediate aftermath, then later transported for treatment at hospital, was confused and partially incoherent during this time. He knew who he was. He knew he had been on his property. He knew that he had driven his truck to the farmhouse carrying a gun, and he knew that he awoke handcuffed to a hospital bed. But he claimed to have no memory of shooting Lauren Kanarek, and no memory of what had led up to him pulling the trigger. Nonetheless, while receiving treatment at the hospital, he was overheard by police stating, "I had a good life," several times, as well as the statements, "They destroyed my life in the last 6 months. They took it all away. I'm sorry this happened." The scene at the farmhouse held few clues. Those that were uncovered would prove significant in corroborating or discounting the sworn statements of those present. Investigators marked evidence despite the rain, which threatened to wash away anything they had uncovered. 2 shell casings were located. Shattered glass on the back door of the house spoke to the direction of at least 1 bullet. The gun, a 9mm Ruger pistol, was found on the ground to the right of a gravel pile. It has been described as a lady's gun, owned by a friend of Michael's, Dr. Ruth Cox, who also kept horses on the farm. Michael Barisone's cell phone was located on the patio table. Both Lauren and Robert's cell phones were at the base of the umbrella stand. Although it had been Lauren that had placed the call to 911, she had done so on Robert's device, not her own, though they were found side by side. Michael Barisone was not tested for gunpowder residue to verify that he was the shooter. Neither were Lauren or Robert. Tensions had been building at Hawthorne Hill for months before the shooting. In the week prior to the incident, the dispute had boiled over. Living arrangements in the farmhouse had fallen apart. Michael and Mary had relocated from the farmhouse to the clubhouse room in the stables, sleeping on couches while his tenants lived in the house. Mary's 11-year-old son, who had been staying with them for a time, was sent back to his father for his own safety. Throughout July and August, Michael increasingly interpreted Lauren's Facebook posts as threatening. Removing his family from the house was a protective measure. Michael and Mary believed their private conversations were being listened to by Lauren and Robert. They further believed that they were being stalked on the property, particularly at night. On the 31st of July 2019, Michael placed his first call to 911 after spotting Lauren and Robert out and about on the property after their agreed curfew of 9:15 p.m.
Yeah, I own this place. I have some people who have been living on this place, and they were told to not be in the horse barn after 9 p.m., and they're in the horse barn. They're scumbags, and I want them warned. They have chased us out of our house, and I need this dealt with tonight.
All right, that was 411 West.
There is a client. We have a horse stable, and I asked her to go home for the evening, and she won't leave the barn, and she's screaming at me. Disturbing the peace for the second time in 3 days.
Okay, my partner, send help. Just stay on the line. I need some more information from you, okay?
Thank you.
4 days before the shooting, on the 3rd of August, Michael Barisone called 911 again. This was the 3rd time.
These people are on our place. They have been living in our house in one of the apartment units. They are clients here at our horse stable. This situation is getting worse and worse and worse. The police have been here twice in the last 3 days. They're nuts. They're stalking us. They're harassing us. Last night there was a Facebook post, which is what this woman does. She's
okay.
Anyway, the Facebook post says, "My split personalities are going to take over, and I am not control of what they do. We are in fear for our lives."
No, I understand, but what is going on right now? Are they
Nothing. That's why I'm calling you. I talked to a couple of my lawyer. He said, call them right away. Get something going.
Okay. Are they there now?
They're down at the house we own, which is a third of a mile from where we are. We're all holed up at the stable. We're under siege here.
A letter to Lauren and Robert from Michael's attorney insisting they vacate the farmhouse had not been actioned. From Lauren's perspective, she could not relocate herself and find accommodations for 5 horses on such short notice. She too felt threatened. She posted on Facebook that she, a petite woman in her mid-30s, was being bullied by a 6'3" man, and she feared for her safety. She spotted a strange vehicle on the property at night. This could very well have been the security guard hired by Michael to protect his family from her. Lauren also placed a call to 911 to report her fears and suspicious activity.
This blacked out SUV with some guy smoking a cigarette in the front who I've never seen before, except for last night at 3:15 in the morning, and we overheard them talking about getting guys to hurt us, kill us, whatever. We told it to the officers this afternoon.
Are you or anyone else in danger right now?
We feel very much like we could be, seeing as though this happened the other night.
The response by Morris County law enforcement was dismissive of the claims of both parties. It was determined to be a civil matter or a private dispute, not criminal, and therefore not worthy of further investigation. Michael Barisone called authorities to his property via 911 emergency on 4 separate occasions, all within the week leading up to the shooting. None of these calls resulted in follow-up actions. It would take the final call out to Hawthorne Hill, placed from a bleeding Lauren Kanarek, to force out the facts of this case. Michael Barisone was arrested and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder for the life-threatening injuries overcome by Lauren and the shot they said was fired at Robert Goodwin. Michael's own injuries were apparent at his first pretrial hearings. It became more apparent as the case moved towards trial in 2022 that Michael Barisone was deteriorating. When testimony commenced in late March, Michael emerged the shell of the man he had once been. Aged, disheveled, hunched over, and visibly distressed. Michael pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, an uncommon defense that is rarely successful. To be acquitted of both counts of attempted murder, Michael's attorney, Ed Belinkus, needed to show that a now 57-year-old man, successful business owner, millionaire horse trainer, and respected Olympian, had suffered a mental breakdown and could not be held accountable for his actions.
Upon hearing that threat, Michael Barisone calls 911. Washington Township responds. He says, "I am in fear of my life of this woman." The police do nothing. Barisone tries to show him the paperwork, the background check that he got, the threatening post. It's a civil matter. They do nothing.
Had officers examined Michael's claims, they were likely to have uncovered that there was more to Lauren Kanarek than meets the eye. She had a criminal history, one that included harassment and stalking, including harassment that involved extensive use of social media to make veiled and direct threats of violence against her perceived enemies. Lauren had at least one pending charge against her for cyberstalking in North Carolina, where she used to live. But none of that history was admissible at Michael Barisone's jury trial. In other court filings, Michael Barisone's legal team outlined past reports and false statements Lauren has made against people she perceived to be her enemy, to Child Protective Services and other governmental agencies, including the police. Her father, Jonathan Kanarek, made threats of legal action and litigation if Michael removed her from the property. He nonetheless tried and failed to have Lauren and Robert removed. All the while, Michael's paranoia grew. Michael began to adopt the same terminology Lauren employed in her Facebook posts. Lauren wrote of going to war. It's about time to possibly go to war. Anyone who repeatedly kicks a resting beast will eventually wake her up. Lauren referred to her dog Rosie as the nighttime army and attacking with weapons hot. Lauren's weapon of choice, however, appeared to be placing anonymous complaints to authorities. In the week before she was shot, the township building authorities descended on Hawthorne Hill, deeming all buildings unsafe and uninhabitable. She and Robert skirted the eviction notice and remained in the farmhouse, while Michael was evicted from the stables and left sleeping on a mattress outside. Fire marshals were called out to inspect the barn, due to concerns expressed by Lauren that a broken heater was threatening the safety of the horses. But the final break for Michael, on the afternoon that he retrieved the gun from his safe and drove out to the farmhouse, was when the state's Division of Child Protection and Permanency arrived at the barn to investigate claims he had abused his girlfriend's children. The division, which investigates such complaints, had been called out after a report with Safe Sport, an organization that fields allegations of abuse in U.S. Olympic and Paralympic sports. A formal written complaint had been submitted by Lauren Kanarek and Robert Goodwin.
Lauren Kanarek set in motion the final, what I call the coup de grace. She did the worst thing any human being could do to another human being. She falsely accused him of sexual misconduct with his girlfriend's son.
You're asked to return a verdict. It will not be about Lauren Kanarek. It will not be about Rob Goodwin. It will not be about Mary Haskins. It will not be about any other person except this man. So you may hear things that you don't like about Lauren or Rob or Mary Haskins or any of these other people. But saying nasty things, misbehaving, if you want to call it that, none of that is a justification to get shot. None of it creates a necessity for that person to be killed. No, we're here on this trial because of the defendant's choice on August 7th, 2019. His choice to get a gun, a pink and black 9mm handgun, to point that gun at Lauren and pull the trigger twice, and then to turn it on Rob and pull the trigger again.
The jury heard from Michael's girlfriend, Mary Haskins Gray, who spoke of Michael's deterioration leading up to the shooting. The content of Lauren's Facebook posts were excluded from evidence presented at trial. What was admissible were references to how this information impacted Michael and his growing paranoia.
Did any of the clients take precautions with regards to protecting their horses based on these social media posts?
Yes, sir.
What did they do?
Slept in front of the horses' stalls, and some of the ladies were super concerned about the status in the barn and what was the threats being made.
Is it your testimony that grown women would actually sleep in front of the horse stables?
Correct.
Because they were concerned for their own horse's safety?
Correct.
And can you tell me what effect did you observe that have on Michael Barisone?
I mean, everything just was materializing more and more every day that she was doing, and he was absolutely unraveling.
Similarly, a private investigator hired by Michael to look into Lauren and Robert Goodwin's past produced a criminal background check that was also excluded.
Can you tell me what impact that had on Michael Barisone when he got that background check on both of those people?
We were horrified these people were living on our property and were unaware of these things.
Were you afraid of them?
I was, yes.
Was Michael Barisone terrified of them?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Stephen Simring, a psychiatrist, and Dr. Charles Hassan, a neuropsychologist, testified that Michael battled the uncommon persecutory delusional disorder, which is a fixed false belief of an external reality despite evidence to the contrary. Michael believed Lauren and Robert were conspiring against him. He believed that they were fixated on destroying his business, his horses, his family, and friends.
Specifically, he was delusional. He harbored a series of interconnected false beliefs which guided his thinking and his actions.
And what did, with those respect to those delusions, what did he believe was going to happen to him?
He believed that Lauren Kanarek and her associates had come up with an elaborate plan to destroy him and kill him.
Michael Barisone had a 20-year history of mental health struggles. He had visited a therapist on and off over the period, whom the defense experts consulted in forming their opinions. Part of this history was reported child abuse that Michael suffered at the hands of his father. The experts also reviewed over 19,000 pages, delivered in half a dozen legal boxes, of Lauren Kanarek's social media posts. Her online attack of Michael Barisone began over a year prior to the shooting.
Was it brought to your attention that there were over 19,000 pages of social media posts from Lauren Kanarek?
Oh, well, yes, that's why I told Mr. Barisone, there is no way you're going to get me to read 19,000 pages. I have better things to do. If you want me to do this, you're going to have to boil this down to 100 pages, and then I'll read it.
Addressing Michael's memory loss, Dr. Simring offered two possibilities.
He got hit on the head, which is probably the most likely reason that he lost memory. During the confrontation, it happened very quickly, and what happened is not very clear, but one of the things seemed to be that Robert Goodwin hit him on the head with his cell phone, and he suffered a hematoma behind his ear and some other head injuries. That's the most likely reason that he lost his memory. Now, when people are in states of high anxiety like that, like anybody can remember, like being, say, in a car accident or being the victim of a crime, sometimes memory is not completely clear for everything that happens because anxiety is so high. However, I think the most simple explanation is he got hit on the head.
Dr. Schlesinger, a forensic psychologist, was called as a rebuttal expert by prosecutors. Dr. Schlesinger testified that there was no basis to conclude Michael had any sort of psychosis or detachment from reality. He also asserted that Dr. Hassan failed to acknowledge that there was a marker on an evaluation showing Michael could have been lying about not having a memory of the shooting. Was it possible that Michael Barisone was exaggerating or feigning his illness?
The respondent may not have answered in a completely forthright manner. The nature of his responses might lead the evaluator to form a somewhat inaccurate impression of the client based upon the style of responding below. And then it goes on the next page, and again, this is in capital letters. The test results potentially involve considerable distortion.
Schlesinger told the jury that the evaluation also found indications that Michael Barisone intended to portray himself in a negative or pathological manner, meaning he was trying to appear more disturbed than he actually was.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My name is Robert Goodwin, Goodwin.
When Robert Goodwin took the stand, he took the jury through the details of the encounter with Michael that day.
Lauren said, I'll go talk to him, and walked down the stairs and walked over to Michael.
Did you see how close she got to him?
I guess she just got around the bush, and within 4 feet. That's when Michael raised up the gun and shot her twice. Well, she turned and ran. And he ran, it looked like he was chasing after her, but then he pointed the gun at me and fired a shot at me.
After diving into the doorway to avoid the bullet, Robert testified that he threw a leaping punch at Michael, which stunned his attacker temporarily. When Michael turned around, Robert seized his opportunity.
Turned around, and I didn't know if he was going to chase after Lauren, but as soon as he gave me his back, I took advantage of it.
And what did you do?
Threw him in a chokehold.
And what happened when you put him in the chokehold?
He passed out very quickly.
Between you and Michael?
Actually, so I was going to go back there. So as he turned around and went to run away, I jumped on his, I threw my arm around his neck and I put him in the chokehold. And at that time, that's when I saw the gun come up again.
Do you remember what the state of the gun looked like, or what the?
So I'm not very familiar with guns. So, it looked like it was jammed at that point. That's what I thought. I thought at that point when he came up, when I first saw it come up, I thought he was coming to shoot me. And then when I saw the barrel and the slide kicked back, I wasn't that concerned about it. But
Ed Belinkus queried at what point exactly during the struggle with Michael had Robert determined that the gun was visibly jammed and therefore empty? Was Robert minimizing his knowledge of guns to excuse his later actions, primarily tackling Michael to the ground, restraining him in a chokehold, and hitting him repeatedly, after he knew the gun was no longer a threat?
You indicated yesterday that you're not really familiar with guns, correct?
I don't know if I said I was unfamiliar with them or I'm not a gun guy.
What's the difference in your mind?
I mean, I've used guns before. I know how to use a gun. I know about gun safety.
For instance, you're a Marine, correct?
Correct.
You were trained with respect to weapons, correct?
Correct.
Didn't you tell the police that the reason why you decided to charge at Michael Barisone is because you saw that the slide was back and realized that the weapon had no bullets in it? Did you punch him in the face?
When Michael was coming back to, he was trying to get back up. I did punch him.
I
did hold him down.
How many times did you punch Michael Barisone in the face?
I don't know. Enough to get him to not get access to the gun anymore.
Do you have any idea how many punches that took?
I mean, this is a fight for my life, so was I concerned about how many times I was punching the man that is trying to get up? I was not, and no, I do not know how many times I punched him in the face. The fact of the matter is he was trying to get back up.
And did you punch him on the side of the head, in both ears?
Specifically, I do not know.
Have you seen any pictures of what Michael Barisone looked like after you got done punching him and hitting him?
Ed Belinkus questioned the credibility of Robert's testimony regarding more than this one point. Robert was also questioned about recordings that he and Lauren had acquired of Michael's private conversations. At some point, it had become obvious not just to Michael, but to several others, that conversations held in the stable lounge and Michael's office were being listened to. Lauren was able to quote verbatim from such conversations directly back to Michael, a fact that further unsettled him. With some regularity, direct quotes from these recordings were posted by Lauren online, long enough for Michael to be aware of them, only to be deleted shortly thereafter. They told their lawyer that they were made from Lauren's locker, a personal space of hers, which is inside the stable. They had not placed listening equipment anywhere on the property, despite many conversations having taken place in the privacy of Michael's office. The transcript of the meeting with their lawyer suggests they are hiding something. However, a debugging company was brought in by Michael to locate these devices, and they came up empty.
Testified yesterday that every single recording that you made in the stable area, and I'm referring to that big building that includes where the horses are housed, the club room, and the office, were made from Lauren Kanarek's locker.
Yeah, or in my pocket in transport.
Okay? Okay, and Lauren Kanarek tells that to the lawyer, correct?
Yes.
And then after she says that, did you say, at least that recording anyway, ha ha?
Lauren Kanarek took the stand to tell her story. Although she was undeniably one of the victims at trial, there were areas where she needed to testify to defend or explain herself. Lauren outlined in her own words how she had been treated differently and unfairly at Hawthorne Hill.
Just like tossed to the side, and then I was just there to pay money and board my horses and nothing more. Sometimes it seemed like it mattered and he was interested in, our progression. Other times it was just, Justin, take this kind of thing.
Would you say you were treated differently, if you acted differently with respect to riding a horse?
Yes.
With respect to the way you dressed?
Yes.
The way you use social media?
Yes.
Did you ever make a complaint to Safe Sport?
I did.
What was the general basis of the complaint or the reason that you called to make a complaint?
There were a few. Mainly it was severe bullying, like torturous bullying. And there was also some stuff in there about body shaming. And that's pretty much it. It was mostly just bullying and scare tactics and things like that, and just a show of, power over someone smaller, basically.
Lauren denied making allegations of child abuse against Michael Barisone. Defense attorney Ed Balinkas presented Lauren with searches performed on her own phone, 2 of them on different dates, aimed at locating the anonymous tip line for DYFS, New Jersey's Department for Child Services. Lauren suggested that perhaps her phone had been stolen.
Those records that you, in fact, were searching for DYFS's anonymous hotline.
The doubt in my mind is this. Earlier that year, Justin Harden, Michael's assistant trainer, had stolen my phone at a restaurant, and we caught him, like we called it, and we found him in his vehicle breaking into my phone and going through it just like a month or 2 before around. So while yes, it's possible that I was just simply searching for a hotline number or just making inquiries online, it's also possible that Justin Harden, who does possess phone technological skills that I do not, after having stolen my phone and broken into it just right before this, may have been able to do things on my phone that I did not.
The defense applied pressure on Lauren to explain her sequence of events. She testified that she was holding Robert's phone when she was shot, then she dropped it. She retrieved hers from inside and failed to use it. She then returned, collected Robert's device, and placed the call to 911. She then returned to the porch to retrieve her own phone to use as a weapon whilst striking Michael repeatedly, back over on the grass.
Somewhere in between, after I told 911 I'd been shot, Rob was, you could hear him struggling with Michael. At that time, I grabbed my phone. I was covered in blood. I crawled somewhere, whether it was an inch away or half of a foot away, to get my phone, thinking the only way that I could help the situation is by helping to make sure no one else gets shot or killed that day, which is why I had my phone and was hitting Michael on the head with it, or on the ear with it.
how long were you beating Michael Barisone with your phone?
Maybe a matter of seconds.
Lauren's testimony, much like Robert's, varied from the statements previously offered to police following the shooting.
Did you say these exact words? I used my 7 minutes to help Rob keep the 6'4" MB subdued by breaking my iPhone on his cheek and in his ear.
Probably said that. Yeah.
7 minutes you claim to be beating Michael Barisone. Isn't that correct? Are you sure that that didn't go on before any shots were fired?
Then what go on? You got to clarify.
The beating, the talk by the dog, and her slamming her phone into his head.
In closing arguments, Morris County Assistant Prosecutor Christopher Shellhorn made a case for simplicity in his closing statement. Setting aside the intricacies of the feud between Michael and Lauren, set aside the multiple calls to 911, those made to town officials, to sport authorities, to child services, Michael's actions on that day had been clear. He retrieved the gun from his safe, loaded it, and then drove out to the farmhouse where Lauren and Robert lived in order to confront them. Simply by choosing a deadly weapon, a gun, the jury can infer that he intended to kill someone.
I would ask that you not return a verdict based on any sympathy, disgust, or emotion, but that you return a verdict that's based on reason, based on facts, and based on the law. And I would suggest if you do that, you will return a just verdict of guilty.
Ed Belinkus laid out a complex series of events. He painted the picture of a man who had been systematically broken down by Lauren Kanarek and her boyfriend Robert Goodwin through a campaign to destroy him. The couple then lied demonstrably to police through inconsistencies in their initial statements and then their later sworn testimony in court. The jury had only the word of Lauren and Robert as to what had happened at the farmhouse, and their word was not worth very much. Ed Belinkus questioned how the cell phones came to rest where they were if Lauren's story was accurate. He questioned whether there was actually a third shot fired at Robert Goodwin at all. And then he questioned if it is possible that they, in fact, attacked Michael before he shot at them.
They say 3 shots were fired. Look at the photos and all the evidence that comes before you. They only found 2 shell casings. Where's the third? You can't have a shot without a shell casing. If there is no third shot, there is no attempted murder on Robert Goodwin. How did Michael Barisone's phone get on that table? On that round metal table by the bush? No one talked about him having a phone in his hand. Kanarek and Goodwin never talked about Robert Goodwin having a phone. If you're going to shoot somebody, if you're coming down there to kill somebody, why would you have your phone in your hand?
The prosecution called 15 witnesses to the stand, including several police officers, Morris County Sheriff's Office detectives, Mary Haskins Gray, as well as Lauren Kanarek and Robert Goodwin. Defense attorneys called 23 witnesses, including Michael's employees, town officials, medical technicians, and several former Olympians. Michael Barisone did not take the stand. A 12-member jury deliberated for roughly 18 hours. The doctor's statements appeared to weigh heavy on the jurors as they deliberated. Judge Taylor received a jury note to confirm the dates each doctor met with and evaluated Michael after the shooting. On the following day, the jurors requested to hear playback of 3 hours of testimony. When the verdict was returned, the jury agreed with arguments made by Ed Belinkus that Michael was battling a delusional disorder. one that had severely altered his thinking, leaving him detached from reality, paranoid, and fearful for his life.
With regard to count 1, attempted murder of Lauren Kanarek, what is your verdict?
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
With regard to count 2, attempted murder of Robert Goodwin, what is your verdict, sir?
Not guilty.
He was acquitted on the charge against Robert Goodwin entirely. It seems the state failed to make a convincing case that the third shot was ever fired. On September 7th, 2022, Michael had a court hearing, appearing much different than he did during his trial, with a clean-shaven face and a haircut. The judge ordered him to be transferred to a less restrictive psychiatric hospital for treatment. He will remain in this facility in New Jersey for another 6 months before his status is again reviewed. Lauren Kanarek has filed a civil suit against Michael Barisone for the attack, to which he has countersued. Michael has also filed a lawsuit against the police officers that failed to take what his legal team believes are reasonable steps to respond to his call for help in days leading up to the shooting. And that was the case of the former Olympian Michael Barisone and the attempted murder of Lauren Kanarek. Thanks for watching. I'm Kevin. This is Just Thought Lounge, and I'll see you in the next one.